Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into front and rear sway bars, and we're going to start putting the aluminum inside the foot boxes and the cockpit area. So let's get started. Alright, moving on to the front sway bar. The instructions for the sway bars are not in the instruction manual. You have to go into the forms and download it. I will put a link in the comments below for you to get to both the front sway bar and the rear sway bar instructions. Okay, first thing we're going to do is you get everything unpacked and laid out, and then you take these rubber grommets here and you slip them over the sway bar. They just split and slide into place. Okay, and then they want you to take some of the lube that they provide and put it underneath the rubber mount. I'll do that once I find out exactly where the brackets that go on it are going to be, so I'm not spreading it all over the place. So we'll do that here, and then we'll bring it over to the car, and we'll start mounting it up. Okay, now you can see the approximate location where these little rubber grommets are going to go, so we're going to go ahead and lube these up as per the book. Put some secret sauce in there. Okay, first step. Before we put the bar in place, it mounts to these two holes here. Got already drilled on each side, except they're a little too small, so we need to open them up to 3/8 of an inch. There we go. All right, grab our bar, slide it up in place. I've already put some lube underneath the little rubber grommet. It's got the consistency of like a sticky Vaseline, and then we're just going to bolt this in place. Washer goes on the side of the bolt head, and nothing goes on the back. All right, we'll install the top and bottom. We'll do that on both sides, and then we'll move on to the next step. So there's step one complete. It's basically centered, and I've got it bolted securely to the front of the car. Okay, I've got it zoomed in really tight here so you can see what we're going to do. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to remove the lower shock mount, and we're going to replace the mounting bolt with this longer bolt with the nut towards the rear. Then we'll add two spacers to the end that look remarkably like those. And now we're going to take this heim joint set up here, and we're going to tighten it all the way till it bottoms out, and then back it off till you get a good 90-degree offset like we have here. Okay? With the female on the top, after it's bolted in to the shock mount with the same spacers in the same spot, we simply slide the heim on here. We'll add another spacer to the outside, and we'll torque it down to 40 foot-pounds. Once that's complete, we'll take this bolt and slide it to the second hole of the sway bar. We'll put the spacer on. We'll put the nut over the top with another one of the small spacers on the front of the heim joint to keep it from binding, and then we'll button it all up. And I'll get you a really good picture of the completed product after we're finished. Okay, there's a good look at the finished product. You can see how the heim joint has the spacers, two on the left side, one underneath the nut. And here's a good look of the attachment to the sway bar itself. Okay, onto the rear sway bar. It's really hard to see because of where everything is under the car, so I'm going to show you this up here first. Then we'll go put it on the car, and we'll get some good underneath the car still photos for you. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take these brackets here, and we're going to undo the forward bolt to the lower control arm, and we're going to undo the toe link, and then this will bolt in place up against those two fittings, which will give you a place. Of course, this will slide onto the sway bar, and then once the sway bar is hooked to that, you just hook it on the bottom of this, and that hooks it to the bottom of the car. And then there are mounts on the frame to hook the ends of the sway bar to, but it'll all be clear once we get under. I just thought this might be a little hard to see, so I'd show it to you up front. With everything painted black here. It's kind of hard to see, but here's the bracket right here that I showed you earlier. And we removed the toe link bolt, and we removed the lower control arm bolt, and we hooked our bracket in those locations. Once we snugged up the brackets, we attached the sway bar just as we did on the front. Okay, last step for the rear sway bar is hook it up to the rear portion of the lower control arm. On both the front and the rear, I had to take the Dremel tool with the small wheel on it and just run it in there real quick to get the powder coat out so the bolt will fit. First, we're going to take these and we're going to tighten them up all the way, tight as it'll go, and then back it off so that they're parallel to each other. Now, the female portion goes on the top. That's the 1/2 inch. So you're going to start with 1/2 inch bolt, small spacer, then your heim joint, then your large spacer. Okay, once we get this in, we just snug it up. And then, after we get it set in there, we'll torque this top part to 80 foot-pounds. All right? Now on the bottom side, take your smaller bolt. And I cleaned out the second hole here. That's the one we're going to use. A single small spacer goes between the bar and the heim joint. And then we'll tighten this up to 40 foot-pounds. And once you do that on both sides, you go ahead and put your torque stripe on it. That's all there is to it. And there's a good look at the finished product. Now, if you're looking at it, what you can see is, well, that aluminum's already in. Good job. Let's move on to the next thing. Well, because I sent all this off to powder coating, any markings or anything I had set up prior to this are now gone. So what I've done is I've re-mocked up the entire thing, put everything together where it goes in the order it goes in. And that way I can see where I need to drill holes that I haven't already drilled, because most of it's been drilled already. And just make sure I have all the pieces and parts back from the powder coater and that everything fits the way it's supposed to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and tear this all down, and then piece by piece we'll build the car back up. And you can see how all the aluminum goes back together. All right, so this is the little cover for the access panel to the master cylinders that goes above the driver's side footbox. So what I'm doing here is I've measured out some holes and I'm drilling them in this panel so I can transfer it over to the main assembly. And I'm going to go ahead and put riv nuts in there so that I can pull it apart when I need to get access to those master cylinders. Okay, got the first holes drilled using my clecos to hold it in place. And now I just work my way around, cleaning the rest of them up. Now I'm going to go ahead and expand the holes so they're large enough to accept the riv nuts. Once the holes are all drilled, we go ahead and install the riv nuts using our handy dandy riv nut tool. Okay, so we got everything matched up and put all the screws in. Now, what typically happens is when you go ahead and put these riv nuts in, they shift a little bit. So my trick is to go in and I over drill this top hole by one size so that between all of the different screws, you've got enough movement in the panel to get everything to kind of fall into place, and then you can tighten everything up. So there you go. The first thing we're going to put in is the little saddle that goes over the top of the transmission tunnel. We'll go ahead and put silicone on everything, rivet it up, and then move on to the next step. We've got Gary in the background there drilling a bunch of holes in another panel, so I went and turned the sound off. What I'm doing here is just putting in the clecos as I described earlier, and then we'll turn around and start putting some rivets in and get everything all buttoned up and ready to go. All right, that's one down. The next piece that's going to go in is this top piece right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set it in place. We're going to silicone and rivet this top part on the 2-inch bar, but we're just going to silicone and cleco the side piece over here. Okay, a little out of sequence. We're going to go ahead and attach this top part to the outside first, and then attach the outside to it. I tried mocking it up a couple times. This just seems to go together a little easier this way. And we've already got the silicone behind it from the previous step. And as always, when I'm done, I'll go through with some acetone and I'll wipe off all the extra silicone that's kind of oozing out all over the place. The next piece we're going to put on is the outer wall of the Footbox. It goes right in like this. So same thing, we've already got our holes drilled. We're going to go ahead and silicone everything, put in some clecos to hold it in place, and rivet it together. Over here, corner. There we go. Okay, the next piece that's going to go in is the floorboard here. We'll go ahead and silicone it and attach it to this side wall over here. Silicone to the bottom here. And we'll stand by on these till we get the side piece in. All right, the next piece to go in is the interior sidewall for the passenger Footbox. And it slips in basically back in here like this. But it's going to probably create quite a mess with the silicone. We'll have to see how that goes. And we'll show you a picture of it when we get it completed. Okay, so here it is all installed. We're going to hold off on this panel right here. I'm going to wait till I get everything in, just to make sure that there's not something I'm missing before I actually rivet that in place. The next piece we're going to install is the last piece on this foot box, which is the backing, or which would be the front piece, where your feet go. Keep your feet from sticking into the engine bay.
And no prescription drug coverage. Humana Medicare Advantage prescription drug coverage includes clinical coverage. Prescription drug coverage. What was it?
And the dealer had a selling a lot of money.
Well, I'm not really sure what happened to the sound on this next clip, but it kind of gave up the ghost on me. So let me explain what's going on here. So we're going to put in the passenger side floorboard. And what I'm showing you is I've gone and installed a patch where the brake handle would come out, because we're going to go with the e-stop brake, an electronic brake, so we don't need the handle there. So we went in and patched that hole, and you can see we've re-drilled all the holes to go ahead and reinstall it. The other thing we did is we had to cut off the bracket on the chassis itself so that you could put that panel in now that the hole is patched. And once that was done, it was ready to go together. The silicone complete, we'll go ahead and slide the floorboard in position and go ahead and cleco it and rivet it in place. Okay, there's a good shot of the floorboard installed. Notice we got the clamps running across the top here because there is silicone here, but there's not any rivets at this time. I don't know if it gets rivets later or not. We'll find out. Next piece to go in is the sidewall here. And we're just going to repeat the process. We're going to silicone it, cleco it, rivet it, move on to the next thing. And there's a good picture of the completed sidewall, and we roll over to here, and we've already put down the silicone and clecoed this back panel in place. We'll put the 6 rivets in, and that'll be taken care of. Okay, so we got the passenger side done. We're about to move over to the driver's side. Unfortunately, I've got to take a little break for some surgery tomorrow, so it's going to be a little bit before I get back to the car. Before I wrap this video up, though, I wanted to go over a few lessons learned, starting with the sway bars. On all of the attachment points for the sway bars, I had to go ahead and spread them open to get all the components to fit properly. More so than what I did when I put the independent rear suspension together. I wish I knew ahead of time that the sway bars attached in with the independent rear suspension. Because the directions aren't in the book, it's something I found out later. So, moving forward, if you have that opportunity to put the sway bars in while you're putting the independent rear suspension together, it's going to save you a step. As far as the panels go, I mocked everything up basically twice. And I can't stress enough how much time that really saved me in the end. Because even after I got it back from powder coating and I set it up the second time, I still found places that needed to be trimmed that would have made a big mess if I had silicone and stuff half riveted. So mock it up, make sure you have everything good, trimmed and ready to go before you finally commit to silicone and rivets. I did have to drill almost every hole again, mostly because of the powder coat, but some of them, a little bit of alignment issue, you can clean that up by drilling a new hole there. Again, you hear me talk about clecos all the time. I can't stress enough how helpful those are to make sure you get those alignments. And finally, I want to show you something right here. On something that I really didn't show you as I was putting it together. In a few places where I had aluminum to aluminum connections and there was going to be any stress on the component, like in the floorboard, for example, I got these tiny washers. These are called aluminum backup washers that are made for 1-inch rivets. You just slip it over the end there, and then the rivet will grab it, and it gives it a lot more grip, a lot more holding power than just the rivet itself. So those are some of the things that I did that you really didn't see in the video that'll help you out in the end. Well, looks like I'm going to be out of commission for a couple of weeks at least. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Do them both at the same time, they said. It'll be fun, they said. I think perhaps they are filthy liars.